my teacher asked me why you did not study. And I said, what's the point of studying maths and physics? I will never become an engineer. I will never go into any technical field. Why do I need to waste my time on it when I have to get my basic degree and then I will live traditionally, get married and have children? And I still remember her face turned red and she said, why, you don't have brain? And I said, yes, that's what I'm told. I don't have brain. Girls don't have brain. Girls cannot learn maths or physics. And her color turned more red. She got really upset and she said, what I have seen in you in last month, you have a great brain. And if you are in my class, you're only going to listen to me.
Welcome to the Happy Engineer podcast, the place where we help engineers like you to build your career, balance your life, and be happy. I'm Zach White, former engineer turned lifestyle engineering coach, and your host for the journey to the career and life that you desire. Hey, I believe that you shouldn't have to sacrifice your life to reach your full potential at work. And what we're going to bring you in these conversations and interviews are the strategies, the tools, and the mindsets that are going to allow you to experience both success at work and success at home. Hey, we do the best we can to keep this free from advertisements. Of course, I can't control what YouTube may throw up, but do us a favor and share this podcast with anybody who you think may like it. And don't forget to click the bell and subscribe and get notifications to our YouTube channel and for upcoming releases of the Happy Engineer podcast. I would love your feedback, and even more than that, love your story. Share with us how these strategies and tools are working for you. Would love to be in touch with you. Connect with us on social media. Find me at Oasis of Courage on Instagram, Facebook, or Zach White on LinkedIn. It's an absolute pleasure to serve you. Now let's do this. Happy engineers, welcome back. Another incredible conversation is about to happen. I just know it. And I'm so happy that you're tuning in. And Farzana, thank you so much for making time. Just the work you're doing and what's in your bio, we could probably go for 3 or 4 hours today, just telling the stories and the experiences and the things that you've learned and the wisdom that you have to share with our engineering listener. But I can't thank you enough for making time to be with us today.
Thank you for having me on your podcast. It is a very interesting name of the podcast, and that was ear-catching for my ears.
I just want to jump right into the heart of your work. Optimize excellence. It's a phrase that any engineer would hear, and it just triggers for us, like optimization and excellence in the work that we do. So tell us a little bit, like, what is it? What is the foundation of what you're doing and what optimized excellence is all about?
My background is in architecture. I have worked in different parts of the world. I've actually studied in different parts of the world. But what led me to optimize excellence is a lifelong experiential journey. My first encounter on job sites was when I was basically not acknowledged as someone who has a technical background or is an architect or who should be listened to for any reason. What a 25-year-old young girl can tell all these other gender on job site. But what I have noticed is how people have their own skill sets and their excellence in them. So going back to that point that I have worked in different parts of the world and I have actually gone through a range of skill sets and trades, people in those skill sets and those trades, from a very high-end corporate leader as owners of the projects to the people working in carpentry and mechanical and electrical who don't have degrees, who don't have background, which we will label as having a high level of quality or competency. But they had something, they had excellence in them. There is an inherent excellence in human beings. It doesn't matter what your qualification is, what your degree is, or what economic or ethnic background you come from. They all try to help each other and to newbies also. So I have been actually helped by those people. So that has been a professional experience in healthcare architecture and complex projects. But then moving on, as I had more experience, I became leader. I became leader in architecture. I became leader, a volunteer leader in nonprofit, international nonprofit. And I saw a constant theme of excellence, human excellence, trying to be good to each other and provide a better life, a joy in interactions, in management, in whatever they do. And I started thinking about it that when we have so much human centeredness in our world, why our world is still in turmoil, why we don't acknowledge it more openly, more in a more holistic way. And that is where the idea of optimized excellence came in. Along with that, I have done my research on leadership and mentoring. So I wrote two books, and both of those books are really deeply thought provoking. One is the concept of leadership in women, acknowledging that women have inherent characteristics of leadership, mothers especially do, along with all other women who are working in very technical fields, and they have not been recognized in 18th, 19th, and 20th century, and even in 21st century. And then the root cause of our unconscious biases. It is easy for me to tell someone, oh, you are biased, you have different isms in you, racism, sexism, you name it, and intellectualism is also an ism. But when I am pointing a finger to someone else, my other three fingers are pointing to me. Those are the root, that is the root
Mm.
cause of unconscious bias, which I call subtle. So I wrote that second book, Subtle, and both the books started at the same time in 2013, 14. I started writing them. I did my own research on those topics, and I published the book Leadership in Women first. It took me a long time to publish Subtle. But the common thread with your question and what led to optimize excellence is that we have excellence in us and we need to bring it to the highest level. It is exactly same what you have talked about your Happy Engineering podcast, that how we can achieve that excellence. My take is that you have excellence. We need to reflect on that excellence, what it is, how I can or how we can guide each other in achieving that excellence, and acknowledge and each other as a human of excellence. And that's what the
Yeah.
purpose
Wow.
of
I
my
mean, there's a
excellence.
lot here. This is awesome. So let me jump in, because if the engineer listening is like me, it's like there was probably a dozen points in there where I was like, ooh, I want to know more about that and that and that and that. So if I go back to, you said I saw and I began to experience this common thread of humans having an inherent excellence in them and a desire or something that was happening to want that to come to the surface. Can you take us back to the specific moments that you may remember where you first became aware of that? You first started thinking that thought. What was the actual situation or the interaction that began to lead you to see this is true about humanity? There is an inherent excellence inside of everyone. Can you tell us about one or two of those moments?
There are many, but what is in my memory is one very early on. So I was fresh graduate out of architecture. I will admit I don't know all the details of how to do put the woodwork together, correct? So I designed something on paper. I wanted it to look like that. And we gave that to the on-site carpenter to build it. And he was very confused. And he said, what do you want? And I said, it's in the drawing. And he said, no, drawing is not right. If I build it accordingly, that detail of the canopy will look very funny and out of scale. So of course I was embarrassed. I was supposed to be higher up than a carpenter on a job site. And I said, okay, tell me how to do it correctly. I want to understand the detail of it. And he gave me his time. He spent a few hours with me, explained to me that what I am showing on 3D and how I want to get it built to look like, I have to do my drawings differently and I have to proportion it differently. So I learned a great lesson from a carpenter whom we will not even invite in our offices for a meeting. And that's what tells me the humanity. He was not looking at me from different boxes, but maybe we, as an elite professional, sometimes look at people from a different perspective. That is one example. Another example is very early on, I was in ninth grade and I failed my maths and physics test, correct?
Oh no. Oh no.
And
We all have one of those stories to remember.
so my teacher asked me why you did not study. And I said, what's the point of studying maths and physics? I will never become an engineer. I will never go into any technical field. Why do I need to waste my time on it when I have to get my basic degree and then I will live traditionally, get married and have children, correct? And I still remember her face turned red and she said, why, you don't have brain? And I said, yes, that's what I'm told. I don't have brain. Girls don't have brain. Girls cannot learn maths or physics. And her color turned more red. She got really upset and she said, what I have seen in you in last month, you have a great brain. And if you are in my class, you are only going to listen to me. You are going to spend an hour after classes every day, and I will teach you maths and physics. And here I am, a few decades from there. I cannot forget my Miss Aisha. I am still emotional about it, that where
Wow.
I thought I cannot learn maths and physics. And that teacher whom I need to find again, she saw that excellence in a human being. And I'm sure she has done it both from girls and boys. And so, yes, those
That
are the
is an
examples of human excellence. So,
incredible. I'm moved by that. And it's so amazing in life when someone takes a stand for you and believes in you more than you believe in yourself. And for the engineer, the leader listening, if you've never had someone do that for you, you may not really appreciate what Farzana is saying here. But for those of you who have, just remember to let that gratitude fill your heart for that and do that for someone else. Take a stand for someone else's potential and excellence. Farzana, can you set the stage for us a little bit? Because there were some really difficult things that you just mentioned about being told, or at least the culture around you telling you that girls don't have brains, and what you grew up thinking and believing about what was possible. Could you tell us a little bit about those childhood years and culturally what was going on, where you were, and maybe address, do you feel like that is unique to where you were in the world or that time period, or do you think that's still very common? And what's the situation today?
my parents were born in India. They were very young when their parents migrated to Pakistan. I am from Pakistan. It is very urban. It's not very conservative or backwards. Girls do get education. I lived my entire life like this. So girls do get education. But the patriarchal mindset of the society is that girls are suitable for certain functions and boys are suitable for other functions. So that was during that time. It is not as much right now. So that is a uniqueness of that part of the world. But what girls are suitable, and in patriarchy, this is not a gender issue. I don't think it's men versus women. It is more a patriarchal mindset that girls are good in home care or home economics. So, oh, if you want to study, really, you can go and do a PhD in home economics. There is a degree in there, okay? Or you can do teaching, or you can do medicine. Those are the functions which girls are really encouraged to allow. But paradoxically, in my family, I had a lot of brothers, and my family did not see us from the lens of boys or girls. And my father actually encouraged me to go into architecture because he wanted his daughter to have something different and unique, but something which is desk based. So that's how I ended up in architecture. And there is a long story around it, but to you answer your question, it is not so over there. Girls are 52% population, and in architectural schools and engineering schools also, there is 50 or 51% girl students, and that is a common scenario over here also in North America. So it is not so. But education wise, you can get education. But when it comes time to get into the profession, here I go back to my story. When I graduated after a 5-year degree in architecture, we were 6 in our class. 3 never started working. They got married the next week, and they did not had an opportunity to work in the profession of architecture. 2 later, when they got married, they, because of the family expansion, they decided they don't want to work. So I I never got married, but I never stopped working either. But culturally, there are still some paradoxes around
Yeah.
women working in male work environments. It's cultural, it's a patriarchal mindset.
This is a challenging conversation for a lot of people to be a part of. And what I'd love to do is then say, because you wrote an amazing book about leadership in women and the Thrive. And I really love the title. I love what I've had time to dig into in there. Would you just bring to the surface for us of all that you've learned and studied and researched and pulled together around this concept of leadership in women? What is the message? What's that core message that women in engineering need to hear today from your perspective?
So what I realized working in 2 different parts of the world, in North America, Western world, and Eastern world, that women are not taken seriously when they are in those leading positions, project managers, project leaders, and they are kind of ignored. And you can understand that in some other professions, but in highly technical professions like engineering, mechanical, structural, aeronautical, I was unable to fathom why it is so. That led me to do some research. And from one of my professors in my Doctor of Management courses, he said, "Oh, the mother of management is Mary Parker Follett." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "You have never heard of her name." And I said, "No, you are the first one, and you are actually saying mother of management instead of father of management. That is important distinction." And through him, I got to know about this amazing woman in late in 19th century, 20th century, 19th century, who has come up with all the ideas of community centers and whatnot in America, but she was never acknowledged and recognized in
Mm,
America. Her
wow.
work is more known in Britain, and that's where she gave more lectures. She is another hidden figure, like we have Catherine Johnston and all those other human computers who worked at NASA and helped in getting man to the moon, correct? Women behind man to the moon. But we
Yes.
have not heard about them. So that put me on a research for where are these hidden figures in all other professions whom we don't know. And leadership in women, in is capitalized. It's not a mistake in English or grammar. A lot of people think, oh, I don't know English. But in is a derivative of inherent, inside you, within you. So the 4 characteristics we talk in today's modern leadership world is emotional intelligence, empathy, grit, and resilience. Zach, you have a mother, you have a grandmother. Tell me, have those women not shown you those capabilities and competencies of leadership throughout their life? And they come from very difficult times of wars and evolution of life for them, from where they were not able to vote to the point where women, good or bad, they still have voice, correct? If there is work need to be done. But leadership in women concept is about acknowledging the inherent traits of women, which has been there all the time, and not only in family life, but in all highly complicated technical fields. And I want people to be able to read and reflect upon that, and let other women, and especially engineer women, thrive in their fields.
And to touch those 4 points, I know we won't be able to get deep into all of them, but emotional intelligence, empathy, grit, and resilience. And the heartbeat of the message here being these things are in, capital I-N, intrinsic inside each and every woman as a leader to possess and exhibit these with excellence.
Yes.
I'm curious then, Farzana, for the men listening, what's the perspective, or how do we need to look at this and this body of work from the male point of view? Is there something that we would want to understand that's distinct or different or similar, or are we just asking the wrong questions entirely? Can you maybe help us out for the men who are listening? Like, okay, well, those are all great qualities. I want those qualities. Are they inside me? Or what do you think? How should, or what would you encourage
So
a
great
man
question,
listening?
Zach. And I was about to interrupt you because I thought I was not done to come to this point. I think in our societies, this goes to the idea of the second book. In our societies, when we evolved from agrarian or agricultural society to more urban society, we still brought in those times of agrarian societies where woman needs to be in the caves or inside, and that lead to this mindset. I don't think, in terms of the feeling or capabilities, there is a major distinction between men and women's capabilities and competencies. Women have not been acknowledged for their grit, for their resilience. For example, man has always been told they are manly, they have to be machos. So they only show their resilient side, their strong, powerful side. They don't show their empathy. They have empathy. They don't show their emotional intelligence. They have emotional intelligence. Let me qualify this with an example. Do you think if I am talking to you here in this part of the world, it just happened because of everything I have? No, there is a list, a line of men who have helped me and supported me, starting from my father, my brothers, my uncles, my dean at School of Architecture, my bosses, my professors, all men. Do you think they did not had enough emotional intelligence, enough empathy to guide, help someone in that regard along with the women? They do. So to men listening to this conversation, I think men and women both have the competencies and characteristics which makes them great and good leaders. But we have mostly associated the word leader and man as a synonym. We have not done it with women and leader. And it is time for us to get rid of those barriers, those mental chains which we have been given as part of social conformity. And then we can look towards a society which will be more equitable. Men do it all the time for their own daughters and for their own sisters and significant others. And I think we can make it a new evolution of mindset and get
Yeah.
past those restrictions.
Farzana, you touched on something then that really opens up the other big bucket of work that you've spent so much time researching and writing about, which is the subconscious mind and these mindsets. And this is a high calling in this question, so take it in whatever direction you want. But what is the most interesting or important nugget of understanding about our subconscious or the unconscious biases that we may have? This is a specific domain with men and women, but it also applies in so many other areas of life. Can you help us shed some light on what we want to be aware of and how to begin uncovering and making changes in our mindsets and our subconscious, whether it's with our beliefs about leadership and men and women or any other subconscious bias that may be present?
So the premise of subtle is that we have heard a lot, especially in last 5 to 6 years in North America, we have heard a lot about racism and a few other isms associated with it. And that is all true. But what is the reason behind it? And I can say, oh, he or she is white, that's why they behave that way. Okay. Or vice versa. They are not white, that's why they behave that way. But even if I am not white and I am looking at someone non-white, I will have those similar assumptions. It means that we all carry our unconscious biases and we display them in very, very subtle way to each other. Now, if that is part of us as an individual, what is the, I mean, how can we just say that the other person is responsible for it and I am the victim and someone else is perpetuating that thing on me? I am also doing it to someone else, correct? I'll just use my own example in that regard. And until and unless we become self-conscious and aware of our subtle unconscious biases, we will not see any movement in transformation or moving towards reducing the biases. We cannot change anything right now overnight, and I don't use word change easily. I want us to be transformed in a better human being, a better version of it. Now, Subtle looks at what has brought us to this point. There are many reasons, but the main one is that we are part of a society. In any part of the world, we are part of subculture and then a macro and micro cultures, and we have conformed to what socially is given to us. You should dress like this, you should behave like this, you should speak like this, and if you are not doing it, you are out of the group. So you are an outcaster, excluded from us. So that's the message of Subtle. I see this a lot in the professions, especially in engineering and technical fields, where,
Mm-hmm.
for example, right now it is a virtuous signaling that we want to have more minorities and have gender balance, meaning if there are a lot of men, we will have some women also. But are you really including them in your inner circles? Do they belong to your companies, to your organizations, to your professions? Or you are just riding the tide right now, and as soon as people will forget, it's not in the news, we will go back to our old habits. So Subtle helps you in guiding through that process and that internal transformation of your heart rather than
Yeah.
just doing it on the surface.
So let me see if I follow, because this is a really powerful distinction that you're making between what is out there in the media or the bold statements around these difficult topics and biases versus the subtle manifestation of that bias in my own everyday life and actions. So measuring a percentage, gender, male, female, or when we're talking LGBTQ or these other areas, and looking at stats and attempting to balance or create new numbers in the news and the media, and that would be the bold thing we might see. But the subtle moment of, well, I still only hang out with all the men on my team and we don't invite the women on our team to lunch,
Mhm.
that subtle moment is where that bias actually manifests and creates and perpetuates the problem. Is that right?
Yes. So let me give you an example, and I'm
Please.
sure AIA will not like it. American Institute of Architects is 150-year-old organization. You can go on their website and see it, okay? They have many, 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 many members, okay? They have done a lot of survey, and they cannot dislike me. It's from their own studies. They have done a study, I believe 2014, 2015. It is titled as Where Are Women in Architecture? Right now, in a School of Architectures in USA, 51% are female students, okay? As soon as they graduate, it is 40% who start working in professions. So forget about the Eastern world. We are talking about Western world. 25% get to the point of licensing, okay, in a few years' time. When you look at the architectural firms and top leadership, it is hovering between 8 and 10%. So engineers, bear with me, 8 and 10% in 150 years. How many hundred more years it will take to have that 50% in the top leadership to reflect 50% women students? 495 or around that.
495. And that's an estimate based on
on
how
their on
what has
their
transformed in the last
organizational
100.
history. I am just making a long. Okay, if they will come and tell me that, oh, I am wrong, it will be done in 8 to 10 years, I will be happy to be wrong, but prove me wrong, please. American Institute of Architects, which actually leads to a difficult question. If this is the situation in an elite profession, which is supposed to be creative and innovative, and the organization, which is considered to be the topmost in the world, what hope do we have of inclusion for women in engineering and architecture anywhere else in the world? And by the way, I think it is the same statistics for women in engineers also. And I have done a session around that too. But Just think about it. What are the barriers of inclusion, especially when it comes to acknowledge women in engineering and architecture as leaders
Yeah,
around?
wow. Farzana, I'm going to ask you something that's a little bit provocative because I so respect your perspective on this from the work that you've done. And it's something that pops into my mind. And so I think some of our listeners may feel this as well. And I think it's a subconscious bias of my own that's manifesting. So I just really want to put this on the table to say, okay, why does solving that matter? And it being fast and happening now, and what's the problem, Zach, we're here to talk about the happy engineer and just how to be successful. And why are we in this conversation about subconscious bias? How does it impact me in my life, whether I'm a female engineer who's happy or a male engineer who's happy, and we just want to keep going? Why does this question really need attention in order to create what? Can you just maybe address that a little bit? I know it's a deep question, and
Okay,
I don't want it
so
to come
what
across as
question are
flippant,
you
but
talking about? Like having equality, having
yeah,
having optimizing excellence? What matters?
good point. Yeah, and I think maybe the question is, for me as an individual, we talk about what is a big societal challenge and problem when we look at these subconscious biases and how they impact the pursuit of excellence for individuals. So if you took it down to the individual level, like for Zach, why does it matter for me to understand what you're talking about and to choose new actions or a new approach in my life as a result of this?
This is a very good question, Zach, and actually this goes to the heart of it. Right now, according to the statistics, the world population is close to 50-51% of women all around the world. So they are not a smaller percentage. They make half and half, okay? Regardless of the orientations, we are not going into that. But that means that if 50% of the world population is under stress, unhappy, that 50% is directly related to the other 50% of the gender. Whether it is your daughter, your mother, your sister, your significant other, if they are having challenges, if they go through what we have heard in the past or now, how will you feel? As a man, it will definitely cause stress on you also. So, for the sake of the happiness and the joy in our world, we need to get rid of our old paradigms, old mindsets,
Mm.
and arrive in 21st century and move forward from there. If we will continue to be shackled by our old mindsets, we will not be able to do much more in terms of happiness and joy for each other. And we all are humans and we all have same capabilities, same emotions, and same excellences. Bringing them together will make our world a better place and a peaceful and a joyful place. That's what I sincerely
I
believe.
love that. I love that. I just love the power of what you're saying. What I agree with wholeheartedly is that we don't create and experience a true next level of success and happiness in our own individual lives in isolation from the communities and the cultures and the companies that we are a part of. So if you're surrounded by people who are not able to lean into the fullness of their own happiness and experience and excellence because of those things holding them down, you're not going to experience what's possible in your life as well. And I think that is one of the more beautiful things to remember, and leans into a generosity around this. Why it matters to me is when others move up and are happier, it allows and opens the door for my happiness as well. I think that's amazing.
There is an old saying, what goes around comes around. If you are spreading happiness, you will get happiness. If you
Oh,
are doing
beautiful.
otherwise, it will lead to the misery. And we don't want to be in misery anymore.
Oh, there we go. That's like the quote of the whole, like, we don't want to be in misery anymore. Farzana, I want to go deeper into all this, but I just to be respectful of your time today, and we'll have to have a part two sometime to keep going, because I know this probably stirred up a lot of things inside of the engineer listening, regardless of their background or current experience in life. But We always end in the same place. I'm excited to hear where your heart and mind takes this. Great engineering, it's like great coaching and just great living, that the questions we ask really matter, because the questions lead and the answers follow. And if we want better answers in our life, we want to ask better questions. And so if the engineering leader listening to this conversation wants to experience more happiness in their life, in their journey, what would be the best question that you would lead them with today?
Very simple for engineers. What is the blueprint of my life now and 10 years from now and 10 years from now and 10 years from now? So try to figure out your blueprint of life.
What is the blueprint of your life now, 10 years from now, 10 years from now, 10 years from now? That is
So every 10
awesome.
years.
Awesome. Farzana, thank you so much again for making time to be with us today. And I know people are going to want to explore your writing and your work and get connected with you. So would you share for just a moment, how can the listener get more of you in their life? Where should they go to find you and connect with your work?
Thank you for listening to me. And thank you, Zach, for great thought-provoking questions. You can visit my website, www.farzanachohan.com. Another way to get to there is optimizeexcellence.com. So the word optimize and excellence.com, optimizeexcellence.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, and the books are on Amazon, both Subtle, SUBTLE, and Leadership in Women. And I wish you all the best. I am looking forward for you to optimize your excellence.
Oh, fantastic. So I will absolutely put links to all those places Farzana just mentioned into the show notes, which you can find at oasisofcourage.com, where you always go to get connected with the show and our guests. So please go check out and purchase her books. Again, just written from the perspective and the mindset of someone who comes from that technical background in architecture and understands the thinking, but also the broad global lens of culture and experiences that Farzana brings is really powerful. So please go buy her books, check out her work, and connect with her. Farzana, thanks again, and I can't wait to take it deeper next time.
Thank you.
Hello, my friend. Zach White here again, and I wanted to let you know that's all we've got for this episode of the Happy Engineer podcast. Thank you so much for investing your time with me today. It is an absolute pleasure to be able to bring you this content. Just as a reminder, it would be amazing if you would subscribe and share this episode with any other engineers you know who may benefit from this. And if you're like me, I hope that you'll take some notes and, more importantly, take action. In our audio version of the podcast on Apple Podcasts and any place that you go to find podcasts, there's a little more content from me about this episode in the debrief. If you really want to hear about how to put this into action, I'd encourage you to go grab that. But thank you for joining us for the video version of our interview today. And again, can't thank you enough for helping us to get the word out about the Happy Engineer podcast and what we're doing. If there's any way we can serve you, would love to do that. Go find us at oasisofcourage.com or reach out to me on social media at Oasis of Courage. And don't forget again to subscribe and click the bell to have notifications of upcoming releases of new episodes of the podcast. As always, I want to leave you with this. If you stay in your comfort zone, you're not going to grow. So let's crush comfort, create courage, and let's do this.